football, the red zone is where a team has to make small adjustments to ensure victory. As you approach retirement, you also need to make small adjustments to ensure success. This is the Red Zone Retirement Program with registered investment advisor and enrolled agent John Mears of Mears Money Management.
Back for another edition of the podcast with Coach John Mears and myself to talk investing, finance, and retirement here on Red Zone Retirement Program. And Coach, it's a little after President's Day, but it's still February, so honoring President's Day kind of thing. Do some presidential quotes and let you turn them into some financial lessons a little bit. Maybe you went out and got you a bed for President's Day. I don't know why did President's Day become like the mattress sale day?
I don't know. It really is. It's the mattress heaven is President's Day sales.
It's the Super Bowl of mattress buying. I think
it's the weirdest thing. Who knows why? I wish maybe somebody could explain that to us. If you're watching this and you know the answer, just leave us a message here, because I would be fascinated to know why.
It would be interesting to know why we selected that one, right? Maybe, I don't know, maybe because spring's coming and you just need a new mattress or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's get into some presidential quotes or not necessarily quotes, but I think kind of some things that they did, who they were, kind of touch on some of the kind of big points, I think. And of course, we got to start with the boss man. We got to start with George Washington. Right. Yeah. Got to go with the first pres. Right. And so patience and discipline, I guess for the context, right. We all think about that, him on the boat, crossing the river, kind of thing, colder than what outside. Right. Mm-hmm. So, to do what they did, you had to have some patience and some discipline, man.
Yeah. The winter of Valley Forge was, it was the what was hitting the fan at that point in the war with England.
Oh yeah, right. So that too. It was cold as hell, and you're fighting like a mofo.
It was a tough time, and there was a lot of desertions at the time. We had to bring in a French, military guy. I've got my notes here. He was
Lafayette.
It wasn't Lafayette at that time. It was Baron von Steuben. Oh. So we brought a guy in that was going to help work with the troops at that time. Lafayette was definitely part of our war effort, but at this point in time, we just needed a guy that's really going to keep the act together here, and the patience we had to have, because we knew where we were going to strike, and we had to. It was one of those. It was risky-ish in the sense that we had to cross the river in freezing cold temperatures, and we had to catch the Hessians, if you will, off guard on Christmas Eve, and they would not be prepared for that, or ready for that. So it was one of those things where we had to kind of get the troops together. Again, we were really struggling. We were not certain to win the war, folks. We all know that. No. It was something that was really we were having a difficult time, and so at this point in time, we kind of had gathered some intel. We knew what was going to happen. By the way, if you haven't watched that Washington Spies TV show, it's certainly worth watching.
Oh, that was a good show, yeah.
We grabbed the intel. We found out, and so we prepared for months knowing what we had to do. That was one of those things back then in the Revolutionary War. Is kind of odd when you look through the timeline. We actually went sometimes a year or two without any major battles back then. It was just the weirdest thing where we'd have a battle, we'd kind of dig in, the British would dig in, and then a year or so later there'd be a couple battles.
This
was one where we had to have our way here. But this was one of the turning points in the war. Saratoga obviously is another one, but this is certainly one of those major turning points in the war. And Washington having a little bit of motivation, if you will, to keep his guys together to get across the river and then up to the attack on the Hessians, which really did catch them completely by surprise, and we routed them at that point in time. Just completely beat them quickly.
Sounds like a coach talking. We totally routed them. We hung 40 on them, and they only scored 8 points.
Yeah, we pitched shutout. Yeah, so it was, but that just shows that in our portfolios we can have a long-term plan. We have to know, and things may not even be going really well for you, but if you have patience and a long-term plan, you can kind of see where you're trying to get to. You still have to have that right mentality, I think, to get there. And then you got to execute it. You got to actually execute it at some point. You can't just kind of wish and hope that it's going to happen. You actually got to get in there and got to make sure that you execute your plan, because we do a lot of financial planning, and people are not really urgent sometimes to complete that part of the plan, no matter what it is. Okay. And that can turn out to bite you if you don't do it correctly. So,
well, and if you're talking about staying disciplined, right? I mean, emotions are going to creep in. I mean, look at what's going on, right? We've got, with the new administration, we're, just a couple of months into it. There's going to be choppiness and volatility. There's a lot of changes. We're breaking up the status quo, things that we've done for, years and years and decades and decades. And so that may require a little discipline on our parts to not, to not panic at every turn.
Yes. Keeping your emotions in check is certainly important. I always tell people the markets going up or down are not the issue. Your panic is the issue, because we know the market's going to go up and down. The problem is your panic. So if you panic and make the wrong move, that's the problem.
Yeah.
So that's definitely where the emotions have to be kept in check. Depending on, no matter what your surroundings are.
All right. So basically what we're doing, like I said, we're taking like kind of two traits, I suppose, if you will, character traits of some of these presidents, and then letting John kind of break them down a little bit. So then we're going to jump, obviously, I think most of us kind of put certain presidents as kind of like the top tier presidents, right? So you jump from Washington to Lincoln, and adaptability and resilience, right? So those are certainly two traits he had to possess to kind of go through the things he went through.
Yeah, Lincoln was very much some people would say he was stubborn in some ways, because he knew the vision of what he wanted to have, but he was adaptable. He was somebody that did listen to his military people and try and get the advice of his military people.
Yeah,
but
I don't think Grant was a popular choice initially. I think he was kind of thought of as a little aggressive.
Yes. So Grant, we all know the story that he was a little disheveled, was kind of a regular guy, if you will, who rose up through the Army ranks with the U.S. military, did not have the class that we all know that Robert E. Lee was kind of like, oh, who is this guy coming to talk to me, because I was classy and I was a general here of high standing, and Grant wasn't. So Lincoln had actually gone through several different commanders, several generals that were leading his troops. And so he kind of knew that he had to kind of have some adaptability in what he was doing. So
because Lee was West Point, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Lincoln, as the battles continued, and it obviously was starting to go on several years, Lincoln actually had to be adaptable. And that was, I think, against his nature in some ways, but he had to be adaptable here. He had to be adaptable there. He had to find the right general. I have in my notes here, he went through McClellan, Burnside, Hooker. He went through several generals, and kind of like George Steinbrenner going through managers, he just kept going through these guys until he found the right one. And once he found Grant, and Grant kind of carried him to the pennant, if we will. We're going to get that baseball analogy here.
And so with the retirement lesson is the same thing, right? I mean, like a lot of times people, use a target date fund or whatever, and we throw something in there and we kind of set it and forget it. Instead of maybe, being a little bit more adaptable and kind of working our way through some stuff.
Yes. Adaptability does not mean discarding a plan, by the way. Adaptability means I think is more nuanced than that. I think that you have your plan, you have your long-term goals, what you want to have, but adaptability does require you to, if there is a health issue, if there is more money, less money for whatever reason, there's things that can happen in your life that we have to be adaptable to. And again, instead of panicking like we talked about with Washington, if you don't let your emotions get the best of you, but you have to be smart when you're adaptable. Sometimes adaptability is simply coming to a new investment advisor, a financial planner, and you had your way of doing things, and your way is probably not working, or it's not going to get you to where you need to get to. That's why you hire a financial planner to get you through there. So you do need to be adaptable, even when working at the beginning, when you're onboarding with somebody like me. I may say, by the way.
You got to be able to say, hey, look, I've been doing it myself. I've got to be adaptable, because you realized you've hit a wall, right?
Yes. And I can get you to the pennant. So that's really what you're looking for here, is somebody that you can hire the right person that is going to be that will be able to carry you through all your financial goals.
John has a couple of free books, Diffuse and Tax-Free Retirement in California, that reveal exactly how you can experience zero taxes in retirement and overcome the IRS lien on your 401k, IRA, and 403b, which could threaten your future lifestyle. These are complimentary, so all you have to do to pick these up 100% free is just stop by RescueMyRetirement.net. That's RescueMyRetirement.net. Fill in the basic info and he'll ship those out to you immediately. That's rescuemyretirement.net for a copy of Diffuse and Tax-Free Retirement in California.
Yeah. Well, so we'll keep moving right along. So we'll go to Roosevelt here. And really, if you think about these three, right? I mean, obviously Washington, Revolutionary War, birth of the nation kind of thing. Lincoln, major turning point, Civil War, right? Obviously massive. And you got Roosevelt, right? World War II, right? So, I mean, but prior to that, right? So you had some things going on before you got into World War II. So strategic vision during crisis. Again, a lot of crazy stuff happened during Roosevelt's term. Matter of fact, he kept being put back in as president, even though we didn't allow for that. And afterwards, right? He didn't even want it. I don't think he even wanted to do the extra terms, but they really kind of didn't have much choice because of all the, the stuff that was going on, right? So you got to have a plan when it hits the fan.
Yes. So the interesting thing about Roosevelt, and this is where we have to give him some credit. He did have some, I'm going to call it a little outside the box. And when I say outside the box, that doesn't mean this crazy stuff, but stuff that he was implementing some new ideas had been around, but he's actually getting them implemented. Kind of going along with what we're saying with Lincoln being adaptable. Well, with Roosevelt, we had to be super adaptable. We had the Great Depression. We had World War II.
Right.
We had a lot going on. And so
unprecedented numbers on the Depression, right? I mean, they're like, look, we have to do stuff. I mean, I don't want to be that guy, but at the same time, you kind of think about where we are right now. Going through this and listening to us talk, it's like we're kind of in a spot again where it's like you have to make some changes. You can't keep doing things as they were. And he ran into that with the Depression.
Yes. Yeah. So with the institution of Social Security, that was something with the New Deal where he just felt that, and again, going back in time to the 1930s, the unemployment rate was over 20% at that point in time. It's just crazy to think of that.
You walk for miles. So my grandfather, I didn't get a chance to get the stories directly, but I got them from my dad. My grandfather literally would walk, miles, to see if there was a job was available, not get it, and walk back.
Right.
Crazy.
Yeah. So we were in a very challenging, the entire world was obviously in a very challenging time during that period, but we were able to institute some things. Roosevelt was the spearhead behind that. Again, we talk about the New Deal, again, Social Security, really kind of rallying the entire country in the manufacturing realm.
Those were all long-term kind of concepts too.
Yes. So these have been ideas that had been brought up before, but we really had to get them. Again, we needed an implementer, if you will, somebody that would actually be able to implement this stuff, get it done, because it was absolutely necessary at that point in time. And again, these were crazy times. We think we were living in crazy times now. Really think about what it was like back then, where you actually had somebody trying to take over Europe. I mean, we talk about Putin going into Ukraine. Putin's not trying to take over Europe. I mean, that was just a wild thought. But back then, that was what was indeed happening. And it was indeed a threat to the entire world at that point.
Oh, yeah.
So we had to have somebody that could have that kind of vision, somebody that could implement, and somebody that was able to, again, I'm just going to keep going back to the same word, implement these ideas that have been on, and making sure that we're getting these things done. Financial systems were in disarray. So we had several legislative proposals that came through in the 1930s that we still look at today on how we're going to manage ourselves in the stock market and with securities, and some of the rules that we have to obey to make sure that we're not, committing fraud and misleading our customers. So we have that along with Social Security, which a lot of us do agree that it's been helpful for people, especially when we look at longevity risk. And then again, when we had the manufacturing realm, where we were up to 40% of our GDP was through the government at that point in time, through manufacturing, again, making weapons. It was as tough as that is to say, but that's what we were doing back then. So,
I mean, Ford and all those places, they switched over from making cars to making stuff to help with the war effort. But so you think about some of the things they put in place, and they're, again, long-term comes to mind. So from a retirement standpoint, we also do have to have some long-term strategies in mind too. It can't all be short-term. I know we think that sometimes when we're at retirement, the road's getting pretty short. But it may not. I mean, you still may have 20 or 30 years, in retirement. So that's still a lot of time.
Yes. And that's, when we talk about longevity risk, we talk about Social Security. That's one reason why we want to wait oftentimes to get the maximum Social Security is because of longevity risk. That is the biggest fear people have is running out of money. They can live on less money, but they cannot run out of money. And that is why we have to always know that Social Security delaying it. And people say, "Oh, well, I might not live till I'm 80." Well, I get that, but you might.
Yeah, okay, very true. So very true. Well, I want to get one more in before we wrap it up this week, Coach. So let's do Eisenhower, because you really kind of had Roosevelt, with the Depression and problems that leading up to the war. We were trying to stay out of it. We were trying to, hey, we're not getting involved. That's over there, until they, obviously brought us in, as everybody knows, through Pearl Harbor. But so Eisenhower really was on the back end of that, right? As a general, right? Mm-hmm. So kind of getting his start there. So preparation and contingency planning. I mean, I think it was Eisenhower even who, when he left as the president, wound up saying, beware of the military industrial complex, right? Yes. So here you have a guy who was firmly entrenched in the military saying, beware of that, right? So preparation to me kind of comes in, kind of jumps out there.
Yeah, I think if we're looking at who the great preparers are, of the last 100 years or whatever, I think Eisenhower is it, because we look at D-Day.
Well, yeah,
the months that went into that. Yeah. That was, again, the turning point in World War II was
couldn't fail.
Could not fail. The beaches of Normandy.
Yeah, couldn't fail.
That was something that, and one thing that Eisenhower was famous for was really having these contingency plans. If then.
Yeah.
Because really, when you're in a conflict like we were during World War II, and then when he became president post World War II, there was so much uncertainty. And like I've said at other times, if you're looking for certainty, you're never going to find it.
No.
And so we have to create our portfolios and do our financial planning with the understanding that there is no such thing as certainty. All it is uncertainty. So Eisenhower is very good at that. And that's why we have we've mentioned this in other podcasts, we use guardrails, because I use income guardrails for our distribution strategy. If you're taking money out of your 401k or your IRA, we have what we call a dynamic distribution strategy, which means if the market goes up, you can give yourself a little bit of a raise. If the market goes down, you might actually have to tighten your belt a little bit over time. But this gives us a contingency plan whether the markets go up or down, which they will. But we have it in black and white what you're going to do. So if you're taking out, I'm making up a number here, but if you're taking out $4,000 a month or $5,000 a month, you might give yourself a raise up to $5,500, or you might tighten your belt down to $4,600 or $4,500 a month, which when people hear about that, they feel much more content knowing that, okay, instead of going from $5,000 to $1,000, it's usually just not a whole lot, just a subtle difference. Again, a minor contingency plan, but we have to have that. I hate it when people say, "Oh, what's your strategy for when the market goes down?" Well, wait it out. Wait it out is not a strategy.
Right.
That's
wait and
not
see.
A contingency plan. Yeah. That's hope and prayer. We actually have a written plan. What happens to you if the markets go down? And again, following along the lines of what Dwight Eisenhower did, he was a guy that really was set with all of his contingency plans, both as a general and as the president of the United States.
Well, so to kind of recap, right? So, Washington was stay disciplined in those tough times.
Yes.
Right? Lincoln was adapt when necessary.
Yes.
FDR was think long term, not just short term.
Mm-hmm.
And Eisenhower, prepare for the unexpected, like saying his name wrong, right?
Yes.
And then finally, the last quote, the last kind of takeaway would be from Coach John Mears, who's just like, let's just have a strategy, let's have a plan, let's get it done, and bull rush the ends.
And a plan that you can implement. So you do have to, when you make a decision, you do have to implement that decision. So whether it be Washington doing what he was doing, trying to attack, which again was patience and discipline. Lincoln, the adaptability was still required implementation. He had to find Grant. He had to make that change to this guy. When we go to FDR, he was able to implement through, again, a long-term strategy that was going to basically save our financial system. So, it's important that you have a plan, you have your strategy, and then again, have all these other traits that go along with that strategy.
Yeah. You didn't hear it. I think it cut me. I think it talked over each other whenever I said that. I said, you got to work with Coach John Mears, get yourself a strategy and a plan, and bull rush the tackles.
Yes, just like the Eagles did in the Super Bowl. Yes,
earlier this month. Yeah, Coach was very as a lineman kind of guy. You were very happy with it.
It was very impressive, very entertaining. I loved it. Yeah, whether you're a Chiefs fan or not. It was not an entertaining
game from a viewing standpoint. It was the first half was just sheer dominance by one team. So I don't like either teams, but I was really hoping for just a good competitive game, and we did not get that.
I found every bull rush very entertaining, even when it was in the fourth quarter.
Of course,
I'm old school.
Right. That's right, exactly. So, all right, my friend. Well, thank you so much. So, look, I hope you had some fun with us hanging out. If you guys got questions, as always, need some help, reach out to John. Get yourself on the calendar. Go to mearsmoney.com or go to bookachatwithjohn.net. We got all that stuff in the links below in the description. So just click on one of those and get some time on his calendar. Have a conversation. Have a strategy for your situation, because we're going to see some volatility. We're kind of overdue. Like we'll probably wind up doing a podcast here in the next couple of weeks. I mean, the tech markets are heavily saturated. You got the whole DeepSeek thing happening now. What does that mean? And there's a lot of stuff going on there. So there's going to be some choppiness, plus the administration, plus this and that. It's probably worthwhile to have a good strategy in place so that you can kind of go through some of these things that we kind of highlighted from the president. So if you need help, reach out to Coach John. Thanks for breaking it down, my friend.
Nice
Always good stuff. Always good stuff. Yes. We'll catch you later here on Red Zone Retirement Program. Simple Investing, Smart Future with Coach John Mears.
Advisory services offered through Mears Money Management, Inc., an RIA registered in the states of California and Texas. California Department of Insurance License number 0685203.